Okay, a warm welcome to those attending the Audit Committee meeting today and those who are watching as well on the Council's YouTube channel. Normally, John Chesshire would be sitting in this chair as the independent chair of the meeting, but unfortunately he's not been able to make it at the last minute, so I, as Vice Chair, will be sitting in his chair. So Ryan, our Democratic officer, shakes his head, so that's definitely happening. Details of the business to be considered today is shown in the agenda, copies of which are accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm goes off, please follow officers to the fire exit and out of the building. For those in the room, please switch any mobile devices off or to silent before the meeting starts. We also have a resident feedback form that you can fill in if you wish to give us feedback on the meeting. Yes, okay, so it says here, move on to the attendees, of course, yes. So before we move on to the attendees, we have a slightly unusual situation here where we have two councillors not on the committee but are sitting at the table. So Councillor Punja and Councillor Mavers are here, and you'll introduce yourself and go around the table. But how we're going to run the meeting is that I'll start off obviously with presentations, committee members will have a go, then I'll pass over to Councillor Punja and Councillor Mavers to ask a couple of questions if they wish to or make a point. And that's how we'll run it. So that's how we'll go. So I am Councillor Nick Dennis and I'm Vice Chair of the Audit Committee, and I'm sitting in for John today and chairing it. Henry.
Councillor Higgins, part of the committee. Councillor Mills.
Councillor Burrows.
Councillor Punja, Deputy Leader of Labour Group.
Councillor Stuart Mavers, Leader of the Labour Group.
Stephen Reid from EY, the External Auditor.
Mark Rudder, also EY External Audit.
Tony Zayman, Chief Executive.
Daniel Tui, Head of Legal Services.
Matthew Albridge, Chief Operating Officer.
Steve Muldoon, Corporate Director of Finance.
Andy Goodwin, Head of Strategic Finance and Deputy Section 151.
Pete Carpenter, Director of Pensions, Treasury and Statutory Accounts.
Andrew McLeod, Chief Accountant.
Alex Brown, Head of Counter Fraud.
Claire Baker, Head of Internal Audit and Risk Assurance.
Ryan Dowell, Democratic Services Officer.
Brilliant, thank you everybody. So we're now going to move on to the first agenda item, apologies for absence. Ryan.
So we have apologies from John Chesshire, also from Councillor Nelson, and the current member has also given his apologies.
Fantastic, thank you. So everything today under item 3, so everything today is going to be public, am I right?
Yeah.
Yep, everything. Oh yes. Does anybody have any declarations of interest they'd like to make? No? We're all good? Fantastic. Minutes of the last meeting. Are we happy to agree the minutes, or Councillor Mills, you want to make a point on them?
Thank you. Acting Chair. The minutes referred to on page 5 that we requested a breakdown of prior year accounting adjustments, and an email was circulated to members of the committee yesterday setting out some of explaining some of those prior year adjustments. However, I'm not sure they actually dealt with the issue that we were trying to get to. So, if I may, I'd like to reset their homework. Insofar as, I'll just use one example, the writing out of overdrawn reserves. So I'm referring to the email that came out yesterday. So variances in the general fund activities exceeding the earmarked reserves were discovered related to 22 and 23 and 23 and 24, and under accounting standards cannot be allowed, and hence had to be adjusted and therefore a part of the prior year. The specific question we're trying to ascertain is, in the year of account in which they happened, and I don't know which year and who was auditing what were our external auditors' comments on those points, or did the external auditors ignore them, and was that ignoring because they missed it, or because they didn't believe it was a material consideration at that time? Because normally, if the offence, if that's may use that word, is committed in 22-23, it should have been brought to the attention a lot earlier than when it has been. And I think there's a responsibility either on our officer team missing it, or our friendly auditors providing support and guidance, not bringing it to the attention and not allowing it to accumulate. I don't expect an answer now, but on all the 3 points that are in the email, that is the question for all 3 points. Who were the auditors? Did they miss it? Did they consider it non-material? What has been the financial consequence in terms of additional costs as a result of not dealing with it at the end of the year in which it should have apparently been dealt with under accounting standards? So I hope that's
thank you, Councillor Mills. That was very clearly put. Who would like to take that? Pete, is it a case of you'd like to come back on the details of answering?
We'll prepare and come back with a joint response because we'll have to talk to other people around the table.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Higgins.
Actually, why don't you let them?
Yeah. Mark and Stephen. Sorry.
I was just going to say, we have looked at these and sought to understand the same question, so I'm happy to provide the audit perspective if that's helpful. So the accounting adjustments in question, I think there was 3 different ones. One was the negative reserve that had to be written out. So as was highlighted in the question, that occurred in 22, 23 and 23, 24. Those are periods for which the opinion was disclaimed as part of the audit, so essentially audit procedures were not completed over the reserve balances. The second adjustment related to the bad debt provision. I would refer to our audit results report on the 23-24 audit, which raised a control recommendation for the council to look at the bad debt provision because we hadn't been able to get comfortable over some of the assumptions within it, so that was signposted as something the council should look at. The third matter related to MRP. That one, I think, goes back a number of years and assurances drawn from the opening balances. There is a chance audit procedures could pick it up in the intervening years. However, given it is an immaterial number and the look of sample on a previously audited balance, it's got a relatively low chance of coming up in sample selection, and we don't believe it did, just by the look of that sample. So, from our perspective, that's our input.
Thank you for that. Andy, and then I'll come back to you.
Just to add a bit of clarity, the question was about prior year, and just to let you know, we sent through the bad debt provision, but that was a current year. Although it's based on an age debt profile, you set your policy in year, so we supplied that information just for completeness, so that if you were reading the outturn monitoring report, you could see the 14 million that we mentioned, and then you had an explanation for the 14, but the bad debt provision was all 24-25 related. Thank you.
Councillor Higgins, do you?
Yeah, it's just a quick question. I'll speak offline with the Chief Executive. I'm just page 4. I mean, it's about the dates. I'm not sure they're quite right. I think the second phase was 22-23, but it's just a point of reference. If that can be clarified and emailed me, I'd be happy with that.
Okay. And in regards to Councillor Mills' question, if we could have them by the end of January, so we could consider them before we have the meeting on the 10th of February, that would be really useful. Thank you. Okay, any other comments on the minutes? We happy to agree? Agreed? Yep, fantastic. Shaking heads. Okay, so we move on to our first main agenda item, which is an update on the Governance Review Improvement Plan. Who's going to lead off with this? Oh, Tony.
Just by a simple way of introduction, I won't labour it because it's in the report. Members of the committee will be aware that this is an overarching programme that brings together different strands of governance and the financial modernisation and improvements that we wanted to make that have been born from internal audit recommendations, external audit, and through some of officers' own observations. So I won't labour it much further than that. Each lead officer will present their area and give an update. I should say that it's not the intention to go into the granular detail of the appendices because the covering report actually captures what's changed from the last time it was reported here as we were requested to do at the full council meeting. So I'll hand over to Steve, I think is first on.
Thank you. So I'm covering work stream 1, which is the financial governance element of the GRIP. So you'll see set out in the report there's been quite an extensive range of actions and initiatives that have commenced or have been underway since the last report and since this committee last reviewed progress. So we have made sure that following last committee, the fullness of the Section 24 recommendations are reflected in the report, in the tracker. Previously we had the first 4, but we've added the 5th, 6th and 7th recommendations, the 7th essentially being carry on and do the recommendations that are being addressed through the GRIP and FMP. So that's underway. We are imminently introducing new spend control measures to bolster those that are already in place across the council. We are currently undergoing the FS process for setting of the 26-27 budget, and through that process we are robustly reviewing all new proposals, all carry forward savings, all proposals that were set forward in the February budget that will land in 26-27. We're reviewing the growth models, and we're considering other issues as part of that process. So really part of the, ensuring we are cognizant and understand our financial situation, which is clearly part of the recommendations from the auditors, making sure that we are clear and the proposals for new savings or growth that's built into the budget is a key part of that. So we're running through that a number of different sessions, both with officers and with cabinet members, before we get to a final position. Similarly, there's been a lot of work since I began coming into post in September, so over the last 2.5 months, to review that financial position that was based on the last budget that was put forward, and there's been a lot of review of the existing savings as part of that process, a review of the growth, a review of kind of key financial and accounting procedures as part of that. And no doubt it's been noticed that the position has deteriorated, but I think we are in a much better position with regard to clarity over exactly what the financial position of the council currently is and where we are heading. So I would argue that there's been a lot of work in that regard. We are also in discussion with MHCLG, so a key part of ensuring that we are able to shore up the financial position of the council. EFS is a key consideration of that at the present time, and those discussions are certainly progressing well and are active and ongoing discussions. They are not yet concluded, and so that is something that I then do consider as part of my statutory duty. And as you go through, other areas in terms of what we're, goes towards ensuring that we understand the financial position of the council. We're doing work on have been doing work on our cash flow modelling so that we understand the impact on that, reviewing the capital programme. Obviously there's been work to improve the audit position and the work contributing to the audit of 24-25, which hopefully is, we think is showing an improvement on prior years in that process as we rebuild the accounts. And another one of those areas that was touched upon is on the DSG and the DSG balance and the impact on the council. And there is significant evidence to demonstrate that the council is making significant progress on that, and that's set out in the report as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is somebody going to take? Yes, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm the workstream lead for the Directorate Governance area, and in this report I'm going to be talking about the progress we've made in the second and third quarter, and just to Just to set the scene is, although we have a governance review improvement programme that is for this financial year, there's a recognition, much like our conversation with the MHCLG, things were happening before the start of the financial year in terms of how we improve our governance across the organisation. We're just looking at a time box period for this particular piece of work. So the progress that's been made within the second and the third quarter is we've got an aligned business and financial planning template, which has been rolled out across the whole organisation, and all the business and financial plans were approved by the corporate directors, and Claire and her team are conducting an internal audit exercise to look at the business and financial plans across the organisation. We have a corporate tracker in place, and that's internally to make sure that we keep a key record of all those business decisions, but also in terms of the governance arrangements, we've got a standard way of working across the organisation, which means there's a golden thread from top to bottom where corporate management team review workforce performance, finance, risk management and projects on a monthly basis, and that's mirrored as you go down the tiers throughout the council. So for senior management teams, which are the corporate directors and their leadership teams, review those before they go to CMT, and likewise with the reports of the senior management team, they look at those areas before. So we've got a more robust way of checking the key things that matter across the council. We've also been investing as part of our senior managers meeting, so we have those on a regular basis. So that's to get all the corporate directors and the corporate directors reports together. At the moment they're actually fortnightly, but they were previously monthly, and that gives everyone a clear line of sight of the issues that are most pertinent to the council, keeping up to speed on an organisation that is changing on a regular basis, particularly given our financial situation. But we also invest in our senior leaders as well by doing things like governance training for them. So we held a masterclass session which also goes through the governance of the whole organisation. And lastly on that, we've made some tweaks to the governance of the organisation, again to reflect both internal, external audit and reflections on what best practice looks like across local government, to ensure we've got really robust key governance mechanisms across the organisation. So a standard set of what we'd call boards across the organisation that report into CMT, that pick out the key issues that matter most towards the council. So, for example, we have a capital board, we have a workforce improvement group, so they are mirroring the key thematic areas that sit across the council, but they have a golden thread up to CMT and up to the chief exec as well. So that's a summary of the progress we've made over the last couple of quarters. Thank you.
Yeah, and the last bit of it is governance. Is that you, Daniel? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members will recall that we have commissioned lawyers and local government, LLG, to conduct an independent review, broadly speaking, of the Constitution and the wider governance around that. So the update for you all is in the last couple of days we have received in an initial draft report for us to review, and we will be meeting with LLG on Friday to discuss that. It looks very promising. It's got some very constructive suggestions there, and as we have advised members previously, once that report has been settled by LLG, we will be, of course, where there are suggestions for changes to the Constitution, that will come back to Council for decision, and we will keep members updated.
I look forward to receiving that. Okay, so I'm going to ask a couple of questions, probably around the finance bit, and then I'll open it up to other committee members to come in with their questions. My first question is, on page 14 in the last bullet point, it says forecasting and in-year delivery of savings and areas of financial risk have been subjected to greater review, and consequently any optimism bias has been removed. Optimism bias, I think, has been a huge problem over the last few years in setting a budget that, to be honest, didn't achieve what the budget was hoped to do. That statement sounds very good. How do I know that statement is not subject to optimism bias? How can you convince us that actually we're going to be setting, when councillors are asked to set a budget, they set a budget which actually reflects the reality of what probably will happen?
So we've made very clear before we embarked on this process this year around the importance of people being able to substantiate what they're putting forward. We have had multiple reviews. We've had reviews at an officer level, starting back from, I think, from the summertime, with things being put forward. We've had reviews, they were ongoing at the point at which I joined the organisation. We have then had a second round of reviews more recently, firstly within the officer level, and then subsequently involving cabinet members, so broadening out that review. We've made it clear to people that they need to really consider things such as the phasing, the quantum, dependencies on all of these things. So I think and in terms of what they are providing us with, we've given them a more robust, I think, template to complete in order to provide the information we need to challenge and understand their proposals. It also forces them to think more clearly about what it is that they're doing and the kind of thinking that needs to go into that work to present something. That's not to say that, there are a number of areas that we are challenging based on what we've seen before, what we're seeing through this year, as part of informing our process as to whether the proposals that are being put before us are robust. There's a lot more work that we've sent people back to rework some of those and reconsider some of those. Some of those might be not quite right in terms of how they are put forward, and therefore whether they are things that should be included or whether they are just more accounting transactions that are not a saving. So we are robustly looking through all of these as we go through. We've also developed further and are challenging and reviewing in some detail the growth models that support a number of different areas, and so we've definitely been going through the detail and challenging those and the assumptions and asking people to take the feedback away and revisit. So this is an iterative process that I think, as I understand it, and the feedback that I'm receiving from people who have been part of this process, that this is a far more robust process than has been in the past. And if colleagues would want to add to that.
So just reflecting on obviously the governance part of it, as Steve's a relative new boy, so throughout the year we've listened and learnt from both our external and our internal audit recommendations, and we've had a robust process in place now for the entirety of this financial year, which means we've built an app. So every single senior manager that's responsible for a saving reports on the progress every month on an app. That then goes to their relevant corporate director for sign-off and challenge, and then in addition it goes to the corporate management team, as Steve explained, for challenge and sign-off. Now that's really important because when you set a budget at the start of the year and you're looking at your savings, you're not always going to be 100% accurate. Things are going to change throughout the time, but we have a monthly mechanism that goes into the budget monitoring that will both challenge that, look at the risks, change that number where necessary. So again, that's picking up from the previous audit recommendations that we've built a more robust governance framework around all of our savings to in fact reduce that optimism bias, but more importantly to have a more accurate position in each of the budget monitoring monthlies. We don't always do it monthly, mostly monthly when we do. So I'm happy from a governance point of view that we're significantly more robust than we were this time last year.
And just to add in for absolute clarity, from what Steve said, that the process that we've been through, anything that's from within this year, where exactly as Matthew said, through the app, the savings are tracked. Where there is a doubt or a risk, then there has been an expectation that how that is going to be addressed in next year is written up in the same way, so almost as if it's like a new saving. So we have absolute certainty, well, more certainty, over what is going to be delivered in year, what is written out, hence we've seen some of the changes in the financial position, but also what is delayed but can be delivered, and there is a clear and robust timeline against that. And then exactly the same for the new proposals that are in for next year. And all of that has complete working papers all the way through. So there is nothing that isn't documented, I think is the key point. So that any question that's called later on in terms of delivery, oh, and I didn't say that, yes you did, and here's the process now, but just to be clear about that comment, that's not about then, stringing people up or anything. That is about actually ensuring that we can circle around that and ensure that in a much more timely way, okay, is that something that can be achieved if we put the collective effort around it, or is it something that we need to substitute or rephase for the following year, but then clearly we'd have to find something in the year. But all of the documentation of those things which happen anyway are now a lot clearer, because I think if we'd have been asked that question last year to present the evidence of those circumstances, it would have been, well, exactly as some of the internal audit processes have found, slightly more hit and miss. I think we have much more certainty over the working papers that sit behind the numbers that we're going to be presenting.
Well, that's very good to hear. I mean, it's not about having accurate predictions, it's having a robust process to make predictions. On other evenings, I chair the Health and Social Care Committee, and when we look at the budget, one of the things that I'm going to be really interested in is diving down into that optimism bias. So it's really good to hear about these processes, because, it's something that definitely over the last year has come to our attention as being one of the things that needs improving. So thank you for that description, and I'll dive into that in my own area once we get there. My second question is, you mentioned that we're in a better position on clarity and where the council is heading, and I think that's from reading the papers and seeing the journey. I think I can definitely agree with that. But obviously, I want to be in a place when we are in a position on clarity and we know where the council is heading. So, when are we going to get to that position? Rather than being in a better position, being in the position where we have clarity and we know where we're heading.
I think over the course of the period, the period 4 to period 6 outturn reports, there's been a lot of work that's been run through in order to get to where we are currently reporting. That's not to say that is what we are hanging our hat on, and that is definitely going to happen. I think you'll note from the report there are also risks and opportunities. There's always going to be things that you are not completely sighted on that could come along in terms of particularly on growth and demand and things like that. But I think we are in a much we should not be struck, in my view, by a massive swing between now and the year end, subject to audit, of course. But to be honest, I think we are getting on top of the issues. We know where the weaknesses have been, and that is where we are looking to drive out any further issues in the finances.
Councillor Bells.
Thank you, Acting Chair. I've got two questions on the GRIP. So what specific issues did the LGA challenge session identify as failing in budget setting and delivery?
Let's take that one first, and then you can have your second question, because I think that's easier for everyone.
Sorry.
So the LGA challenge session, we had a finance representation attend from the LGA at CMT just in the recent weeks, and that was really about ensuring that everybody at CMT understood, I guess, the consequences of where we currently stand and the potential outcomes from where we stand. What does EFS mean? What are the consequences of that? Reflecting on how we came to be in the position of requiring EFS and the conditions around that, as well as how do we avoid the situation that led to this coming upon us in a way that wasn't necessarily foreseen a year ago. So it was a time to reflect rather than a challenge process as such. It was a round table discussion to make sure everybody who didn't quite understand what it all meant could ask questions, and to discuss kind of where MHCLG might stand on some of these things, what support is available, and how we might approach those.
Councillor Bells, next question.
What is the council's definition of essential spend? And under that definition, how does the cost of the Hillingdon People magazine qualify? And will this spending now stop?
Surely that's a decision for the Cabinet whether to spend it on Hillingdon People. But in terms of definitions, the definition, I'm going to remove the Hillingdon People aspect of that question, because I think it's a point that can be made, but not here, because I think that's a Cabinet decision. But I think the question about essential spend, is it essential spend? Yeah, essential spend and how that's defined, I think that is a good point. So, yes, can you talk us through that?
I think this fits into the category of what is the purpose of spend control. I'm not going to talk about specific cases because I think they need to be judged on their own merits at the time and the conditions. So, for example, if we are in a contract and we are contracted with a supplier to undertake certain works, then we need to honour those, because clearly there is a legal obligation to honour contracts, and certainly something that spend control does not seek to do is to undermine our legal position and the responsibilities we have in those regards.
Tony?
Only because the question isn't as clear as it might sound. So essential spend is different to like statutory spend, if you like. So there are some things that we, as a council, have no choice but to do. How we do them is something that we can determine. But what's essential from an officer point of view is, I suppose, is an interesting question on the basis that what officers do is implement the policy of the administration of the council. And so to a point, you could say that is what is determined as essential spend. What is essential when one is in a position of having parameters put around spend is different, and I think that's when it then gets into the territory that Steve was talking about, clearly where we've got commitments that we would have to stand by, because otherwise, we're in breach of a contract, then we would make them. We have statutory duties that we would pursue, but it's where the element of discretion around those things lives in the world of policy making, if you like, by the council. That is where essential starts to become sort of more blurred, and I'm sure it might be the nature of the question that clearly in relation to circumstances of a 114 notice or something like that, then that is where that second definition of essential, if you like, sort of comes along, where we would, where Steve actually, as the 151 officer, sort of would determine what is essential spend against the resources that we have. But exactly as he set out, we're not in that position at the moment because of the ongoing discussions with MHCLG. So it's not as straightforward a question as it first appears, I don't think.
Thank you. Something that I think we'll revisit as the months go on, anyway. Councillor Mills.
Can I seek clarity in terms of the EFS discussion you're having with the civil servants? One assumes that the vast bulk of that is focused around the financial governance and the directorate governance that the whole GRIP programme is talking about. To what part, if any, does the fact that Hillingdon actually has outstanding children's services, highly rated adult services, indeed I now understand we've been rated in terms of one of the most low-cost adult service providers, and also the fact it gets very high ratings in terms of its housing provision. So all those good factors that our council employees are delivering on a day-to-day basis, does the department take into account that aspect, and is that some of the reason why substantive and meaningful discussions are still going on, rather than go away Hillingdon, you're a basket case?
So the discussion around EFS, so exceptional financial support, this is the support that we are seeking in order to make sure that we have the necessary revenue or amounts, which would include borrowing, to cover all of the expenditure this financial year. That is what the EFS will deliver. In terms of children's services, we have not gotten into detail on this. We're still at very much the high level of what the quantum might be and what the timing and what the conditions around their approval might be. So there will need to be, no doubt, some assurance applied, and so we will face questions and we will need to provide information to the representatives of MHCLG as part of their review to form an assessment of the council and the direction it's taking and how robustly it's addressing the situation and what further work might need to be required, as well as whether it can place reliance on that work. So it's not specifically about what is in the GRIP and the FMP. That's just one part of us demonstrating that we are addressing the issues that we understand have been raised with regard to financial governance and financial management and other matters. So it's just one stream of things. Certainly we have been in various conversations, I think, trying to demonstrate and make clear to governments that we are low cost and that the level of funding is an issue. That's being borne out by the proposed level of increase in funding that will come to Hillingdon over the coming financial years. So I think that we are yet to see, we will hopefully find out by Christmas on that. But clearly there is a connection between being low cost and yet being low funded and being in the situation we are in. There is a degree of correlation in that. That's not to say that there is nothing that we can do. We can and should be doing what we can. We are where we are, and we need to be addressing things as best we can for the residents of Hillingdon.
Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. The contingency for slippage in savings, is there one? And is everything on the savings, because we've had slippage in savings, obviously, in the past. With this new system, with the app and all these other bits and pieces, has that catered for a percentage of contingency, or are we only going to be going for stuff that we know that we can actually deliver? Is that a fair point?
I think there's probably a couple of ways of looking at this. There's current year budget, and if you were to look at the latest monitoring report, as you'll see over the last couple of months, we have released in full the contingency that was available. That's not specifically and solely in respect of savings. It's for all potential risks that the council could face. Clearly the financial forecast demonstrates that contingency does not fully cover those risks. Part of trying to address this going forwards in future years, we will re-establish a contingency for next year's budget to mitigate against risks and unforeseen issues. Part of that will no doubt involve, a risk of non-delivery of savings. I've yet to be at a council where they have delivered 100% of their savings in the year for any year. So there needs to be some, contingency allowance for that. So the way you try and minimise the impact of that is clearly by having a robust process in terms of assessing the savings that are being proposed so that they are actually deliverable. So that's a way of trying to reduce the amount of contingency you need, is to put robust savings in the first place.
Okay, well, thank you, committee members. Councillor Mavers, is there anything you'd like to add to this agenda item? No, thank you. Councillor Punja, is there anything you'd like to add? Go. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment around this word robust, because I've heard it probably more than 20 times in this one item. And it means healthy and strong, and it means that we are in a position of healthy and strong, which we clearly are not. And I just want to give an example, because I was in a meeting the other day, in the Health and Social Care Committee meeting, where there was a performance review, and the document there used the word robust in misleading the CQC findings. And I think it's really important that we are accurate, that we are in a position of getting to robustness, but we do not band around the word robust so that we are eluding ourselves that we are in that position already. I think the reports can say that we're not in a robust position, and I appreciate that the work that is being done is to get to that robust position, but I just want us to be really careful about using that word, because it gets used a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Punja. I'll now move on to the next item. Right, we have the Finance Modernisation Programme. Oh yes.
May I just...
If you want to talk about robust, go for it, but don't be long.
Of course. Just one point to make, Councillor. The Section 25 statement has two requirements, and one of them is called the robustness of estimates. So we do need to use that word, and it doesn't necessarily mean the Council's financial position is robust. It means the estimates are based on sound and kind of backed up evidence, if that makes sense.
If that could be clarified with an asterisk, then to make sure that we understand the use of it, that would be much appreciated, especially at the Health and Social Care Committee, which I also sit on. Thank you. Okay, right, let's go to the next agenda item, which is the Finance Modernisation Programme. Who will be speaking to this? Yeah.
Can I just check whether I don't know whether the slides are visible online, or... Yeah, okay.
I assume we could attach the slides to the minutes or the papers or something. They're in the papers. So people online can have access to them.
They're in the papers. So this is clearly a journey. We embarked upon this programme to try and identify and address issues within the finances of the council. And so the starting point for this is where we foresaw that there were issues that needed to be addressed. So clearly we're going to mark these all red. But essentially they cover 4 different areas: accounting and control, budget monitoring, Oracle EPM, just to decode that, that's our planning and budgeting tool, and then Oracle ERP is our main Oracle system. This is where we currently see progress having been made. So green is clearly making very good progress, and then there are others at varying stages of progress. But from the preceding slide, you can see that there's been significant change and movement in that. This has been obviously too detailed to include in the GRIP, so therefore we're including it in this separate presentation. You can see, therefore, significant progress across the board, across all of those 4 headings. Issues are being addressed. We are making progress towards a more sustainable financial management setup. We're on track on many of these areas to fully address these issues and embed the processes going forwards, and obviously these areas will continue to be addressed in the second phase of the project. So this is the status at the end of phase 1 of the FMP. The benefits that we foresee will be across budget holders, so that's staff across the council who are responsible for the finances for their service areas, the finance function itself, and also it will provide support to many aspects of the audit process. So in terms of budget holders, this will therefore bring changes in terms of what they see, how they use the system, their understanding of the system, and obviously training for them to do a better job as a budget holder. In terms of the finance function, clearly this is going to help us to reduce the friction and the issues that we've recently been experiencing with the system. It will improve the reliability and the clarity of the data, and it will help finance staff to produce better quality analysis from that data with a reduced number of issues that they have to address from the data first, or to worry about and have to check. So pay forecasting stands out as one of those areas where the data on which the current or the previous forecasting mechanism was based was not the preferred option and caused a number of issues. So that will improve the process there. And in terms of the audit, issues have been raised with regard to the implementation of the system, but we are addressing those in particular, things such as access and authorisations, transparency of the data, and this will all drive greater trust in the data for the audit and the auditors in that process. So as this slide demonstrates, we're making progress on some key areas. So accounting control, the draft accounts are now being audited. As part of that process, the working papers have been commented on by the auditors in respect to the previous financial year as being weak and difficult to see their way through. We have been improving those working papers, and clearly quality assurance and review is a key part of ensuring the quality of those working papers and the information that the auditors have to review and rely on for their opinion. So we hope that this improved process is now demonstrating progress against those past comments and the issues behind the disclaimed accounts that we have seen over the previous couple of years. In terms of balance sheet review, insurance, clearly that didn't demonstrate robustness. In respect of 23-24, it is important to address the balance sheet as part of this area and the risk, and this will, if not addressed and put to bed, risks continuing to impact on outturn positions, which we want to avoid going forward. In terms of monitoring, training is a key part of this, and we're starting on that for budget holders and senior managers over the next month. We have introduced budget submission templates for capital projects for the budget year for 26-27 that we'll be reviewing, and obviously making sure that this is all documented clearly as a key reference point for understanding consistency is important. As you can see, we've made a number of progress across a number of areas with regard to finance systems, so chart of accounts within Oracle, but also satellite systems such as payroll and the Zealous platform, and matters within that. And then in terms of Oracle EPM, improving the look, the feel, the clarity, how users experience and make sense of that, and routinizing business as usual, such as maintenance as part of that, is also being addressed. So a number of benefits, don't want to go through the detail too much, but the key elements coming out of this: good practice, defined processes, standardization, common timetable, single source, transparency, and fixing flaws are all the key facets of the benefits through this process. Gone too far. So, in terms of what this delivers on the refresh and stabilisation, standardised functionality will be a key part of this. So, good practice will be embedded through that. Addressing the backlogs of issues, optimising and routinizing, all key deliverables as part of this. And then key points to pick out from this one, so as not to be too repetitive: better alignment between systems and future-proofing will also be part of the overall programme. And it might be hard to read. I don't know whether Matthew wants to potentially talk to this one, but you can see that we have mapped out key strands and work streams within the Oracle refresh, and that's mapped out over the coming months with a view to starting next financial year on a much better, stronger footing. Thank you.
So my
question really is about, again, we're on a journey, and ideally we'll have arrived, but we haven't arrived yet, but being on the journey is better than not being on the journey. And I know, I need to discipline myself, don't I? That's what happens when you chair randomly. But what's missing from this for me is the threats. So obviously the journey looks good, what's improving seems to be good, there's a lot there, but it needs to happen. The next steps, the next phase of delivery, the EPM refresh and that stuff, what the benefits it should be providing all seem really good to me, but life isn't that simple. So what are the threats and what are the sort of barriers in the way for arriving at a place where, you know, we can be a model of how a council sort of operates as a business, so to speak?
I might look to other colleagues to support on this one in a moment, but clearly, first things first is to fix the system. We ourselves don't know necessarily how to fix this on our own. We need specialist support, and we have that specialist support in place to work through this. So having the right level of support and expertise working on this project is key to make sure that any barriers as they present, and clearly they will present themselves through the course of the project, that we have the right processes in place to identify those issues, consider those issues, and agree on what and how we are going to implement fixes and changes to those is key. Another area is clearly then the user experience, or rather users actually understanding how they are to use the system and what information is available to them. So we have plans around making sure that there is as much engagement in the process and taking on the new system and responsibilities, so being really clear in training which has been designed on what the responsibilities of a budget holder is and how they are to review their information and then how they are to forecast, so that we get a much more robust forecast coming through from budget holders relating to those areas. So those are a couple of key areas. I don't know if I can hand over to Matthew for other.
So, thank you, Chair, and I will try and use the analogy of a journey. So, we always knew the journey would be across the financial year, and when we set out the finance modernisation programme in response to external and internal audit, but also we knew we had to make the improvements anyway. We always knew there were going to be two phases. So we were at the end of phase 1, and we are resourcing for phase 2. So we are on track as much as we can be, recognising that life isn't linear. When you're trying to do systems work, it isn't always as ideal as it needs to be. But I think what this slide shows you is where we want to be. So we want to be at the start of the next financial year with the ability to have delivered all those benefits, to be in a sounder financial position, to have changed the structure within finance, and to set up those mechanisms so next year we can accelerate our journey on being better in the way we manage our finances from both a process point of view, but also how we manage them within the organisation. So, as Steve said, that's about skilling the right people up, having the information available in Oracle, so we democratise the data, make it easier for budget managers to report more accurately, but also that will enable us to better strategically manage the finances of this organisation. So it's always been the plan for it to be 2 phases. We've delivered all the things that we set out to at phase 1. We're now moving into phase 2. We constantly monitor and manage risks, so we've got robust governance for how we manage Oracle and the finance modernisation programme, and we've made the governance even, I think robust is probably a really bad English term, but we've made it more robust.
When you're told not to say a word, it's the word that's always in your head.
It is, I know, and I couldn't not say it. Is because there's multiple factors. So, for example, we've got multiple partners now. So, when at the moment we're doing the integrations between our HR system and our finance systems with Zelis, Oracle, and our internal team, we require slightly different governance in terms of the partner scenario around those. But I think what's absolutely critical is we've got the political at the top level and a senior officer the buy-in for this to be successful, and we've got the governance that surrounds it, and we monitor and manage it on a regular basis.
For next time when we talk about this, I'd like to have a bit more about the struggles and how we're overcoming them, because that for us is the really interesting point. Sorry, Councillor Higgins wants to come in, then I'll bring you in, Tony.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to pick up, I mean, the question that I was going to ask is very similar to yours. Is that it's a good question, very good question. But we're not auditors and we're not accountants, so we need something that'll be a thing. And as a businessman, I do a lot of SWOTs for my businesses and so that's what we want from you. You know, we've seen the opportunities, we've seen everything's strengths, and we've seen everything else. But we haven't seen the other things that are going behind the scenes, which we really want to see, to make sure that you're making the progress and you've got a grip of what's going on. Sorry to use that term. I can never use that term again anywhere now. And the other thing is what the political side of how does the budget then, is this a push of a button? Is this where it's, I'm just sort of back to what's that book, 2000 or whatever. Is this about a push of a button and at the end of the day it goes out and says, well, you've got this money to spend in this area, this area, this area, and then that's when us as politicians can say, oh, well, we can use it on that and that and that. Is that what is going on here? Or is it, let's get hold of the finances and make it stronger, and then, I don't understand where the other bit relates to.
Tony, you had your hand up about something else, but do you want to come in on this a bit, and others, if they can add to that?
Well, hopefully I'll suggest something that may address it rather than respond to it directly. What I was going to suggest is that the steering group that we have, which, and just so that people are aware, we do have one of the finance experts from the LGA who has oversight of the programme and the work that we do as well, just for an objective, holding us to account for how we're engaging in it, holding GT to account for the part that they do within it as well. But what I was going to suggest, because when we were looking at the end of phase one, exactly as you've seen there, you saw that sort of from red to green and blue and amber, but actually it hides a huge amount of detail and everything that's happened. And I was going to suggest that we may ask, because people have heard there's been a lot of discussion about GT and the work that they're doing, that I was going to suggest to the committee that we have them along and they take you through, because actually we had a couple of hour session. I'm not suggesting it will take a couple of hours, but we'll try and tailor it. A couple of hour session sort of going through that detail, and it actually does bring it to life a little bit more, because otherwise it just looks like stuff. But, you know, yes, it was red, now it's green, and some things are recognisable to non-accountants, some things aren't. So certainly I found it supremely helpful, because we went through it in some detail. We're able to sort of ask the questions about it, and it just gives a little bit more life to the process and the scaffolding around that process that's been there over some time. And I know the committee's heard a lot about it, but I think the questions probably illustrate to me we may need to bring it to life a little bit more.
I think that'd be really important, because I mean, there is a trust issue. It's not a personal trust issue, but obviously we end up in this place because previous information that we've been given wasn't as good as it should be. And so while I completely trust the process now and improvements have been made, I think we need to understand and learn about what's going on underneath for us to be able, to give the tick that we need to give, and so that sounds very useful. I would maybe, this is something that the chair of the real chair of the committee can sort of take up about how we do that in the best possible way with his expertise, but I think that sounds like a really good idea. On Councillor Higgins' point on basic clarity of spending, I think that was your point, really, was it? Sorry, you had it on and now you turned it off. Well, you should have had it off, but anyway. It is a case of, does this system mean that people will understand how much money there is to spend and then the choices that can be made? Is that what you're...
Well, the basis of a SWOT is we're seeing a lot about the strengths of what we're doing, yeah, but we're not seeing, it's what you said, we're not seeing the weaknesses, and then we're not seeing the opportunities. Obviously we've got lovely Alex over there that has loads of opportunities for us, but we don't, and then we haven't, we've got a rough understanding of weakness, but we don't really know what those weaknesses are, and even with the new system in place, what are they going to be? And that's what I'm trying to get at. It's good to have GT along to show us that's fine, but I want to know where if I was it was my company, and I would be saying, hang on a minute, I want to know where my strengths are, where are my threats, where's my opportunities, where's my weaknesses. And I don't think we're getting all of those things. I think we're ticking a couple of those off, but not all of them. And I think for us as laymen, it'd be better to have if you have a chart and it just says, well, that's what it is, that and that, you have a better understanding straight away. It just makes it easier.
So more SWOT-like in future, please.
Well, I guess we weren't necessarily going through strengths in the charts, but clearly the first slide is like red across the board. Those were the areas that were the weaknesses, and clearly where the opportunities are. So, and that is what we are addressing as part of. We haven't done it as a SWOT analysis, clearly. So, but in terms of what those weaknesses are, those are the areas that we are addressing as part of this programme. Hence, they are weaknesses.
I suppose I don't want to labour this too much, but obviously the first slide, red, these are all the problems. We know there are lots of problems, definitely. The next slide is green, things are progressing well. That looks really good, but we need to get underneath about the pain and the risks still, I think. And I think that's where we're coming to really in terms of that's for me as on this committee, the type of stuff that I want to know. And obviously Tony's suggestion about getting Grant Fulton to talk about, I don't necessarily mean deal with that right now in this meeting, because again, it's not a criticism of what was presented. Very interesting, it's good to know the journey, but that is something that I'll want to look into in the future. So fantastic. Councillor Bells.
Thank you. Phase 1 has ended and the next phase is starting. When? How confident as a management that this will be completed by March? And how much has been spent on Grant Fulton for Phase 1? And what is the expected cost of Phase 2?
If you need those broken down, or clarification, do go back to Councillor Bells.
I'll answer some of that question, but not others, because so Phase 1 has finished. We are contracting for Phase 2. The report on that will go to Cabinet on Thursday night, and you'll be able to view the papers then, although it will be a Part 2 paper because it has commercials in it. So Phase 1 is completed. Again, that presentation demonstrates in terms of the areas that Steve went through, in terms of where we want to be in terms of the red areas, the green areas, the areas that we delivered. The yellowy stroke blue areas are the weaker areas, the ones that we haven't delivered for very good reasons. They're the ones we expect to deliver by Phase 2, and we have a coherent and resource plan to deliver all of the things we've set out for Phase 2.
Okay, well, I'll be interested to look at Cabinet papers on Thursday. Well, why is management refusing to supply the invoices from Grant Fulton for public inspection of the accounts to 31st of March 2025?
I mean, I think that's a question that I'm going to refuse you to answer, because again, that's not a question for this committee. We don't look at invoices of specific, do we look at EY's invoices? I don't know if we do. We don't look at invoices of specific contractors here. If there's a political point that will be raised, that you should raise that in another place. Okay. Any other questions from committee members? No? Yeah, go for it.
It refers back to the earlier item, actually, a little bit, but reference has been made to the budget monitoring reports being scheduled for each select committee. However, at the Health and Social Care Select Committee on the 11th of November, no such report was presented. As adult social care is an area which has such significant expenditure in excess of budgets, this seems a particular concern.
So I can explain that, because I made that decision as chair of Adult and Social Care Committee. The reason why I made that decision is because the last time the report came to us, we had a bunch of comments about how it could be better. We're having a separate meeting at the beginning of December, unlike any other committee, due to our workload. When Finance contacted me, they said, we can't do everything you want, but we can do it for December. So I've decided to have that report in December instead of our November meeting, because we'd get a better report. So that was a me decision as the chair of the committee rather than officer decision. Okay. It's a great committee, by the way. We've mentioned it loads, haven't we? Very interesting. Right. Councillor Mathers, is there anything you'd like to add to this agenda item?
If I may, Chair, thank you. I wanted to start with an example, really, where confusion in financial processes can cause a lack of governance or a lack of clarity. So just recently had to ask questions around the Chrysalis Fund when something that isn't usually chrysalis infrastructure, CCTV stuff, was under that budget line, with the answer being back that, you know, that the lines haven't been divided yet. I distinctly remember from the Section 25 report before the budget that there was a blurring of lines almost when it came to budget lines, and I know there's still final reviews and things being done, but it did appear through a number of different reports that we've seen that there is a need to resolve some of these things sooner, so that members can be clearer on, you know, what we spend or what we wish to spend and how we spend things. And it's always been a particular concern of myself and our group, and I suppose other councillors as well, around pace. We have different views on how fast or how slow, and that's, you know, a bit like the porridge example of too hot, too cold, and just right. But I do think pace is important, and when it comes to clarity of member decisions, having the accurate information, including what cost centres things are coming out, I feel is more of a priority than maybe, and I don't know all of the priorities in detail, as you would know, but it's more of a priority and it's something that needs to be resolved quickly. So my first question is how to improve the transparency, to improve the ability of scrutiny, to improve the ability of cabinet member decisions. Are we going to quickly be able to resolve some of these quick wins of just what budget line does this come out of, and why does it relate to this? We shouldn't need to follow up with questions as this doesn't sound like this should be coming from this pot, if I may ask that.
I mean, is there... So... No. Okay. Is there... I mean, you don't have to give...
I'm not really clear on what the... Sorry, on what the...
I'll tell you what. I'll give you a choice, Councillor Mathers. You can either re-ask this question or you can ask your second question. You can't do both.
If I may, Chair, I'll put the question in writing.
Okay, fine. So there was an optimism bias spoken about earlier, and obviously there's a want for more threats to be identified within these reports. And I do think when it comes to kind of financial position and the current picture, the reserves, there seems to be a real optimism around our position in comparison to other boroughs and other places. Now, Croydon has its own unique example and situation which people will be familiar with, but when it comes to the crucial difference with Hillingdon, others applying for exceptional financial support have had known their position sooner, and we are later to the table in knowing our position, and with it coming in kind of spring and after the budget was set. So I'm just interested in safeguards that are in place and how that light of coming to the table later, and obviously there's ongoing consultations we don't need to talk about, but it's more how this report is continually going to be communicated, and whether the committee is going to consider and officers are going to consider giving more reports to full council, so that the progress isn't just shared here but is shared more broadly to the council. So the question is effectively, you know, I know there's a report coming up for council with something regarding to this, but how the safeguarding and robustness and the position that moves can be continually reported to council. Daniel, could you explain how things get put on the council agenda?
Well, thank you, Chair. I suppose that I'd just start by stating what members probably already are aware of, that the Constitution, which the council operates under, which is a recognised model and form of constitution, sets out a series of decision-making bodies within the membership, and there is a distinction between certain areas of business that the council will look into in full assembly, and then other areas of business where members will deal with oversight and review and decision making by virtue of the committees that are formed for that purpose. So the first answer I would say is that this is the items that you've raised there, Councillor Mathers, are certainly within the terms of reference of this committee, and it would be the norm that this committee would look into it accordingly. This committee, alongside all committees and subcommittees, are structured by way of political balance, which allows all members, irrespective of party, to participate in that decision making and that debate accordingly. So, broadly speaking, this is the right business for the terms of reference for this committee. We also, of course, have our external auditors with us this evening, and there's a whole structure around how we receive in our external audit reports, and under certain circumstances, certain reports will go up to full council at certain points in the year, and again, that's largely what we've seen in terms of the process this year, and that the Section 24 report, which we received in, went up to full council for debate, and was then redirected to this committee to manage very carefully the steps that the organisation would take in order to implement the recommendations that our external auditor has provided. So there's a sort of an interplay going on this year in that regard. And of course, I'm at risk of telling members what they already know, of course, but then of
maybe
course,
not. Who knows?
We
go for it, Daniel. Just be. Also, there are people watching who might not know the process of the council as well. So
yeah, but then of course we have the whole budget approval process, which culminates in our February full council meeting, where the full assembly has the opportunity to look over the budget that is submitted by officers for members to decide. And there's an entire range of discussion around that. I'm more than happy to take this outside of the meeting, Councillor Mathers, and talk you through other possibilities or other suggestions that you have.
Thank you, Daniel. Councillor Punja, do you have anything to add on this agenda item? Go for it.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back to a comment that was made by Matthew, which you first said you delivered all in phase one, but that is not the case, and then you altered that by saying that we've not delivered all in phase one and it will go into phase two. So I've just looked at the document, and it says in literally 50% of the budget monitoring and the Oracle ERP have not been met or delivered, and 30% of the Oracle EPM has not been delivered. So what my question is why, what were the pitfalls and the barriers to not achieving these, and what impact will this have on phase two in terms of cost and time for delivery for March that we've got there?
Matthew, do you?
Yep, sure. So in terms of, in terms of the phases, we've in majority delivered all the things we set out to in phase one, but recognising this is always a yearly programme to get where we need to be before the end of the budget year. So, like any programme, it's not linear. As the chair stated, is we review it on a regular basis in terms of the governance to make changes to the programme as necessary, with actually the goal of a programme is to deliver what you need to do by the end of the year. So there will be a pivoting across the piece. I'm not going to go into the cost of the programme because that will be a decision that will be made by the Cabinet on Thursday night. Again, it's a public record of how much phase one of the contract costs. Phase two hasn't been decided yet because it still needs Cabinet approval. What we've done is we've reviewed all the things that we need to do in phase two, put a clear resourcing model around it, both through Grant Thornton and what we need to do to deliver it internally, so we've got the right resources internally, and we've got a coherent plan to deliver phase two.
Thank you, Matthew. Right, we're going to move on to item 6 now, which is a summary of responses to the staff survey. Who's presenting that? Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just get it up on screen. Thank you. Like you, Chair, I am not an accountant or an auditor, so I'm pleased to have a nice segue away from finances for a second and talk about the staff survey results from 2025. Chair, how long have I approximately got? Because there's quite a lot of detail here, and I recognise it's quite a busy agenda.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, I will do my...
And obviously assume that we've all read the papers, which we have, I'm sure.
Yeah, so staff survey. So in terms of what we do as a staff survey, so we conducted it throughout most of the month of June. So the staff survey is open to all permanent member staff, but also all agency and casual workers, all people that are part-time, but it is not available to people that work for schools. And the survey itself is mostly online, so it's mostly via laptops. You can access it on a mobile device as well, but we recognise that some groups don't always have their own laptops, they don't have easy access to mobiles. So in addition, there was a paper survey, for example. We went down to the depot for the people that deliver the waste services, so we can support them to deliver out the paper forms as well. So standard survey, like you get in your life, is there's a spectrum of strongly agree to disagree, where people, and we have to round up some of the results. In terms of the results you'll see, we've done a variance, so we did a staff survey around this time last year, so we've got a benchmark of the progress we've made from 24 to 25, and we'll be doing 26. But also there is something called EBM, which is external benchmarking, which is a set of organisations, not just from local government, that's the wider public sector, that's the private sector as well, that have a similar makeup as us in terms of size, complexity. So we've got a robust check and a balance in terms of good governance, robust governance as it were, is how we understand both our performance from year to year, but also in terms of how we're performing against other organisations. So in terms of the headline results, so there was an 8% increase in response rates since 2024, with good representation across most of the council. There's been positive improvement, so this is a really good news story for all the officers around this table. Since 2024, all but one question has made significant improvement, so that's an increase of more than 4% on 9 questions, and there were significant improvements in the number of returns, in level of engagement in a couple of our directorates there. So again, in terms of the big ticket items, so understanding how my role contributes. So one of the fundamental measures in any organisation, does every member of staff understand how their role contributes to what we want to deliver as an organisation and our vision. So that's 95% of all of our staff, and that's a 14% variance to the external benchmark. So that's significantly higher, and is, I think, a testament to all the staff and the leadership of this council, as well as our members, that everyone is committed to the organisation, what it's there to deliver, but in particular for Hillingdon residents. Again, something that we're really proud of is being clear about what's expected of me. So again, that's 94% staff, and that's an increase of 11% to the external benchmark of officers across the council being clear in their role, what's expected of them. That demonstrates both good leadership, good management, and again, a commitment as the individual about what their service is all about. And 93% of staff consider themselves to be treated with dignity and respect. Again, 10% higher than the external benchmark. So again, a great result that we, as officers and members, we treat our staff with dignity and respect. So that gives a good slice across the organisation of some of the biggest metrics that understand the corporate health of an organisation. From last year to this year, there's an 8% increase on feeling action will be taken as a result of this survey. Again, really positive that we don't just survey, we take the results and don't do anything about it. We reflect on those, and we've got an action plan, and there's been positive improvements across almost all of the demographic groups since last year. We've got a response rate of 63%, and I won't go through it. We've got the data broken down to each of the directorates. Also, really importantly, is I'm showing you the council level results. Each team over a certain size have their own staff survey results. So this enables, for example, me as a corporate director to understand what's pertinent to my directorate. I've got one of my reports, Alex, with me, so Alex has his own set of data for his team, as do all my reports. That enables us to have a one council approach, but also an approach and an action plan that varies between the different teams within the council. So we've got that really robust level of data.
Yeah, if you just want to conclude now, then we can get to questions, because obviously,
yeah,
I mean, it's a good report, by the way, so people can read it.
So in terms of the 6 areas, you've got engagement enabled, connected, safe, supported, and action. Again, mostly they're all above the external benchmark, and they've all seen improvements from last year. So again, really, really positive. I've put the highlights and lowlights. So I call them lowlights, but actually they're not really that low if you look at the external benchmarks, because our lowest areas have made improvements since last year, but also are mostly are mostly around the external benchmark, a little bit lower, but they're improvements on our side. So although there are lowlights, there are areas that we are improving and we've got plans to improve. I'm going to go on to the actions really quickly.
Okay, very quickly.
So really quickly. So in terms of the high level actions, so we've taken it, agreed as CMT what the high level actions, and we've communicated them with all staff. So we're improving our staff communications. Again, we have regular council connects back to the floor, regular sessions with each of the directorates. We've got Viva Engage, which is a Microsoft tool that we can have more stakeholder engagement, more face-to-face sessions, more videos, more sessions with non-network services. That means people that don't work in the civic. We've presented the surveys both at team level, at directorate level, at council level, and we've held focus groups to identify some of the areas. As you would have seen, walking around the building, we've improved the work environment. We've got new laptops, so we've got good technology. We've got good buildings to work from. We want to foster inclusion and enhancing well-being, so we're trying to reduce absence, understand some of the key drivers behind absence, sickness, and we've got a good facility to be able to support staff through that, particularly when people go off sick, and we are providing managers with the skills to have mental health conversations, to have mental health first aiders. And lastly, but no means leastly, I think, that's again another terrible English, I should go back to school, is I think throughout all of this is there is a lot of stories that are negative about the council. So actually we should be really proud for working for this council and what we deliver for our residents. As Councillor Mills stated, is we deliver very, very high performing services at very, very low cost, and it's quite often easy for staff to get demoralised to hear lots of the things about our financial situation, and none of that's down to the hard working members of the staff. As a corporate director, I see the work that goes day in, day out from our staff who go above and beyond. They work really hard, they work beyond their hours, and they deliver excellent services. So we want to be really clear about the things that we've delivered. I think we often undersell ourselves as a council and as a borough, and all the excellent services, all the projects we do, and actually some of that is about rebalancing our communications and making staff, they feel proud for working for Hillingdon Council, but actually feel really proud in each of their teams about all the excellent things that they deliver. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm the guilty one who asked for this to come to the committee, not because I want to break up all the finance stuff, which we're going to get back to shortly for all those who are interested in that, but also we spend a lot of time talking about systems, but people are so important, and obviously in challenging times it's really important we know what's going on with people. So my only real comment is the one thing that I would love to improve is the I feel valued by Hillingdon Council, because I value council workers, and I deal with lots of council workers when residents contact me about things, and I think the council does lots of great stuff. I know there's always stuff that people sort of pick on that maybe could do better, but for me personally, I think that's currently at 55%. I think that's something that I would like to see us working on. So Tony, I'm looking at you because as Chief Executive, I think that sort of comes with you, but anything, that's the one area that I think really, a lot of good stuff in there, but that's the one area where we could try and push it up, because I think people are valued, so they should know it. Yeah, nodding. Yeah. Okay, great. Any other questions on this? Councillor Burles.
Just a question. When SIPFA did their survey of the finance team, they found morale was low in the finance team, and yet in this report it's up. Is there any reason for this? It differs from the report from the SIPFA and the staff survey.
But SIPFA was a while back, wasn't it? Because I remember at the time I picked that out, and Matthew, you said the journey had already begun to improving the morale in the finance team. So yeah, but really important, because obviously we want to make sure that you guys and everyone who works for you is doing well. So I mean, what do you don't need to say, but are the current scores, are they better in the finance team? And if so, how come?
So from the presentation you won't be able to see the scores from the finance team, you can only see the response rate from the finance team. So we're quite happy to come back to you with a summary of the scores in the finance team.
Okay. Councillor Mavers, is there anything you want to add to this agenda item? No? Councillor Puncher, is there anything up? No? Fantastic. Okay, so I think we're now on to item 7, which is... Oh yes, I keep on forgetting to note the recommendations. We note the recommendations, yes. Sorry, thank you, Ryan. Not Councillor. I know, I need to... Well, that's why I'm only a temporary chair rather than the permanent chair of this committee anyway. I know. Right, item 7, external audit, update on accounts. So Mark and Stephen, how would you like to handle this?
I think, Chair, I'll pass over to Pete in the first instance because it's his paper, and then we'll provide an audit overlay on top of that.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, just a couple of things really. There's 3 parts of this paper. National background, which is always an important context. In 23-24, 216 disclaimed audits, so that's 47% of all councils in England. At the end of September, only 6 audits completed for 24-25 out of 400. So again, low numbers because of the things we're having to do to build back. And because we've now got 2 disclaimed opinions, highly likely it will take another 2 years before we get to a clean audit opinion, which is in line with what's going on across the rest of the country. Locally, the account submitted 22nd of September, so later than expected. Public inspection period has taken place. We've had 4 quite detailed sets of queries from the public. In fact, 2 people actually came in face to face, which was good. And we're working through those queries. Although there has been government guidance through the process, that was too late for the audit process itself to build back. So the vast majority of this audit is looking at transactions in year and not building back opening and closing balances. You can see the amount of audit queries there have been at November. This changes on a week-by-week basis, both in and out, and that is a process we're going through with the external auditors at the moment. We must complete all of our external audit items and all the samples before Christmas to allow EY to get through their governance processes after Christmas, because it's really, really important for the next committee that we have, although it'll be a disclaimed opinion, in the audit results report you have the 36 to 38 areas that the external auditors look at, and we want as many of those to be positive as possible. Last year, of those 36, 20 were red, 10 were yellow, and only 6 were green, so we need those numbers to go up considerably this year. And just the positive, I've been talking about looking backwards. We've got 2 people in actually looking forwards, because it's really important as well that we deliver our accounts before the 30th of June next year. And so I've got people starting to look at a soft close at the moment for the end of September. We will repeat that process for Q3 as well, which should reduce queries overall to ensure we actually move into the closure process with a lot of the issues dealt with up front. So I'd stop at that point and over to Mark.
Thank you, Pete. So the external audit has been going for about 5-6 weeks now in terms of the actual testing. I think our reflection would be, and it was alluded to earlier, the kind of feedback we raised on the quality of the working papers and initial supports last year has improved, and the work that's gone in there. We're moving through with the actual testing. We are seeing some small delays starting to crystallise, which we're just working with finance staff to work through at the minute. They shouldn't impact the overall delivery, but there is a risk there if they continue to grow. Otherwise, there's nothing significant to report from the findings so far. We will present an audit results report which summarises the assurance gained in each of those areas, as well as any audit findings. So far, there's a couple of minor audit differences that we're working through with management, but nothing material to the financial statements.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to add, Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Probably just helpful for the committee to understand what the reporting timelines are on the back of that. So the next audit committee, I believe, is the 11th of February. So to that committee, the intention currently is to bring an audit results report, which will summarise the results of the audit for the year, key findings, audit differences, any control recommendations. We are also required by the National Audit Office, as all auditors are required in local government, to issue our auditor's annual report, even though the audit may be incomplete by the end of November. There is currently a draft auditor's annual report which summarises both the status of the audit, which is clearly ongoing, and also our narrative and conclusions in relation to the work that we've completed on our value for money responsibilities. That report is currently in draft with officers, and we're working to agree factual accuracy of that report with a view to issuing that prior to the 30th of November.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Bells.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to the recommendations issued in July under the Section 24, that the Council urgently establishes a clear understanding of its current financial position, including the extent to which the position has diverged from the assumptions underpinning the 25-26 budget, and may require immediate action to prevent further depletion of reserves during 25-26. Does the external auditor consider that sufficient immediate action has been taken to comply with the later part of that recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. Our work in that respect is ongoing at the current time. There is the report with management that I talk about, so my preference would be to agree the factual accuracy of that report, but we do allude to our view on that within the report, which will be published, as I say, before the end of the month.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee members? No? Councillor Mavers, is there anything you'd like to contribute to this agenda item?
Just one quick one, if I may. The government has issued additional grants and announced additional grants, and these may fall out of timing with accounts, etc., and may incur extra fees if we weren't expecting bits to be done through auditors. So I just wanted to understand how these would be dealt with within the accounts. Yep. Who would like to take that?
So in terms of the accounts, you're quite right. We have the audit of the actual accounts, but then there are a number of grant statements, and actually there's a number that internal audit look at as well. And so there's a whole suite that then the external auditors look at, and look at internal audit's work as well. So when new things come up, we have to look at them. So as an example, in the report, you've got the fact that 24/5, which always works a year in arrears with housing benefit, we've got to look for a new external auditor for that, because our existing external auditor isn't continuing at that time. And so we're always looking at those things to actually make sure we've got the contracts going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Punter, is there anything you'd like to add to this item? Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. I would actually like to ask EY that given the continuing financial deterioration of the council, can the external auditor confirm when it intends to issue any further statutory notices like Section 26, 27 or 28 under the Local Audit and Accountability Act 2014? And could you just explain to us what each of these statutory notices mean in practice and what circumstances would be triggered by them?
I think there's a couple elements to that, so I'll take them in reverse order and just explain the powers. So that there are a number of powers that are given to external auditors under the Code of Audit Practice, which is issued by the National Audit Office, one of which is the issuance of the recommendations under Section 26 that we did. Other powers that are in there are a wide range of circumstances, and not all, I think, have ever been used. So one, for example, is auditors can apply to a court to get a declaration that we think a council is about to take unlawful action. We haven't got that intention, just to be clear, but that is a power that's out there, as is a public interest report and a different type of recommendations which can only be issued where we have received an objection on a set of financial statements, so there's a difference there as well. The recommendations that we issued were in July, so that's five months ago. I think it's right that we give the council an opportunity to respond on those recommendations, and Stephen's referred to the report that we'll be bringing through, but I just want to be clear that report, whilst it touches on some of the things since the 31st of March, it is primarily our commentary on the Council's arrangements up to 31st of March because it covers the 2024-25 financial year. We will report on the Council's arrangements during 25-26 as part of our 25-26 audit, which will start as soon as the 24-25 audit is finished. At this time, we're working through that report, and that report will provide an update on the status of kind of our views on the Council's arrangements. I don't want to go any further at this time into that. We will conclude the factual accuracy checks with management, and then the report will be made available to members as it will to everyone.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next item, which is the annual... Oh yes, yes, thanks. Do we note this? Yeah. I'm so keen to get on to the next item, I forget to do the most important bit, otherwise you'll have to come back and that won't be good. Right, so the next item is... it was going to be item 8, session with the cabinet member, but unfortunately the cabinet member has given apologies. Is that correct, Ryan? Yeah. Okay, so cabinet member is not here. So we move on to cabinet item 9, which is audit committee annual report. This was at the last meeting, and an opportunity was given to us rather than sign it off then to add any comments or any suggested edits. Have any comments or suggested edits come in, Claire?
Yes, so we did receive some feedback following the last audit committee. John actually updated the report as the chair of the audit committee. He was going to present the paper if he'd been here just to explain. He's made the updates based on the feedback that was received. So he was happy.
Thank you. So are we happy to approve this? Yep, fantastic. We approve this. Did I do that right, Ryan? Fantastic. Right, let's go on to item 10, the Risk Management and Strategy Risk Reports. Claire, this is you. Did you say you're happy to have this as read? Is there anything you would like to add?
Just one thing. So, yeah, I'll take it as read. The only thing I was going to raise, so following the last meeting, we have changed the timings of these reports. So historically, we did quarterly cut-offs at the end of the quarter. As agreed at the last meeting, the data for this report was taken from the 3rd of November, which was as close as I could get to the paper deadline to give me time to write the report, so it is more up-to-date than previously.
Thank you, Claire, for your work, as always. Good report. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Bells?
Got two. Can you provide some further information about EDU SEN 0006? The issue of a school where there are safeguarding concerns.
So I don't own the risk, but I can look into it and I can provide you with an update out of the meeting if that's okay.
And of course, if there are any sensitivities, that can be dealt with, because sometimes there are sensitivities of such things, aren't they, about public? But yeah, if you could contact Councillor Bells about that, that'd be great. You've got a second question.
I've got another one on another risk on HLBC 00006. You seem to be sceptical about the savings programmes and the possibility of any sufficient mitigation. As the projected cumulative deficit on the general fund has increased again by 5.8 million in month 6, according to the Cabinet report this week. The potential need for EPS would seem to be heading towards 80 million, including a minimum level reserves. Do you agree?
Of course, Claire cannot agree that, can she? So I think, though, the point is that the risk has been highlighted and it's probably happened, so well done for highlighting the risk, but I'm not going to let Claire answer that because it's impossible for her to answer that. If the Cabinet member was here, he might have had a go.
If she knows the answer, can she give us the lottery ticket numbers as well?
Sorry. So Councillor Mills was saying, yes, if she knows the answer, can she give us the lottery ticket? That might be useful. But anyway. Right. Councillor Mavers, is there anything you'd like to add to this agenda item? Councillor Punja, is there anything you'd like to add to this agenda item? Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I just wanted to ask why a financial risk on that HLBC 0606 was, the risk rating went from A1 to C1, given that the budget was not robust and is now reliant on EFS to be a going concern. So is there a reason why it's gone down in grading rather than stayed at A1?
So I think, so there's two different risks. So there's HLBC 006 is our strategic risk cross-cutting. These are owned by CMT, so this sits with Steve, so I'm not going to throw to him straight away and put him on the spot. So this is the more cross-cutting one, and obviously it takes into consideration some of the actions that we're taking, talking about EFS. So potentially that's why that risk is currently C1 rather than A1. There is a risk that is A1 around financial, which is more short-term operational risks in terms of the wider financial modernisation programme. So I imagine that was the one you're referring to. But yeah, on our strategic one, that is, it takes into consideration the wider work that's going on around our financial position.
Steve, would you like to answer that, or if you feel like you need more time, give us a written response to that?
Might be helpful to do a more written response, okay. But clearly this is something I've picked up since I joined, so there was I can't speak to the A1, I don't recognise the change, so maybe that's something that's just dropped out of the process. But certainly we are doing a lot of work to try and resolve the situation, discussions with MHCLG, and that contributes towards making sure we have the R word.
Okay, yeah, so if actual a written response can be given, which then we can add to the minutes and made public, that would be appreciated, thank you. Excellent. Do we agree? Are we content? No. We note. Yes, we note. Fantastic. Right, on to item 12, the counter fraud progress. I missed that, item 11? Oh, sorry, Claire. Right, internal audit progress report. Is there anything you'd like to add to your excellent paper?
No, I'll just take questions.
Okay, fantastic. Do we have any questions on this? Are we, Councillor Bells?
How did vacancies create such serious internal control failures in green spaces? What controls were breached and what debt is at risk?
So in terms of the Green Spaces audit, they had a lot of changes at their senior management level. So there was a change of head of service, and they brought in a whole new senior management structure with a new director for environment, who's taking this forward, and also new heads of services. So they've done a sort of review of their structure within Green Spaces, and because of that and the timing of that, things like the budget setting or the sort of savings program transformation stuff, a lot of that, the findings from the audit was things like that weren't happening because it was reliant very much on more junior members of staff and operational staff to lead on some of those things. It is something that was a known area of risk. It is an area that we were targeted towards to have a look at, and we do have a very clear action plan around the steps that the service is going to be taking. We do have now monthly monitoring meetings that members of my team attend to make sure that those actions are taken and those are addressed.
Councillor Bells?
Thank you. And just when will Internal Audit share the draft Directorate business and financial plans?
So draft we don't share. Once it's finalised, we will share it. So that will come to the next audit committee. It is signed off. It's just waiting for the final top-level sign-off, and then that report will be issued. Once it is issued to the review sponsor, which in this case is Tony, and then it is up to Tony to share it further with members as he sees fit, but it will come to the next audit committee.
Great. Any other questions? No. Councillor Mavers, any contributions? No. Councillor Punge, any contributions? No. Fantastic. Thank you, Claire. So now we're on to counter fraud progress report. Oh, for noting, sorry. We're almost at the end. I might get this right before the end. Okay, right. Counter fraud progress report. Alex, you're happy?
Yeah, happy to take as read.
Happy to take as read. Fantastic. Do we have any questions? Or I know, Councillor Higgins, you liked often. Yeah, I know. Luckily the microphone wasn't on there.
No, it's his big week. It's his big week, and well done. That's all I'll say. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. So yes, no, well done for all the work you do. Brilliant. Any other questions or comments? Nope. Councillor Mavers, any contributions? Councillor Punter, any contributions? No, fantastic. Are we content with the report? Yeah. Yes. Noted. Yeah. Well, the best you're going to get is contented. Right. So we're on to the work programme. Do we have any comments on the work programme? Are we happy with it as it is? Yeah? That's good. Excellent. Okay. That's the end of the meeting, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So we can have that. End of the meeting. Thank you, everyone.